everyone. It's Ryan Fowler here with my good friends Jordan Kurtz and Tim Costello. We have a good one today. This is probably the first interview where we've gone through the whole darn thing, and that's just because there's just been a lot to mine out in this interview between Jerry Wise and the School of Greatness channel. So today we're really going to look at the roots of codependency and chronic anxiety in the family dynamic. And you may think, oh yeah, this doesn't apply to my family. Well, 90% of people are at least mildly codependent. And if you're at least mildly codependent, that means it does apply. So gonna be a good discussion. But before we get into that, Jordan and then Tim, introduce yourselves.
Well, first of all, happy episode 100.
Yeah, I noticed that. Number 100.
Digits.
Woohoo! Yeah, and we hit 1,000 subscribers like a month ago too. So hit milestones, nice, baby.
Nice. Indeed. I'm Jordan Kurtz. I'm a hypnotist like these two. And like Ryan said, this therapist, we only covered like 10 minutes of the whole thing last week. And so I figured we'd do a part 4. And I really
figured it.
What's that?
You figured it, huh? You're in charge. Huh? No, I'm just kidding.
I suggest you asked.
I'm just playing with you. I did ask. You said let's do part 4, and I said yes. So I'm just messing around.
All right.
Yeah, we usually do part 4 before part 5.
Yeah,
that's true. Well, I help people with hypnosis. I'm probably going to come out with some free materials eventually soon here. I'd like to. Flirting with the idea of opening up a school. I might put some stuff out on my website. I've been working on audio tracks, and as Ryan and Tim know, I've been working a lot on very detailed instructions for identifying subconscious programs that both of them have been helping.
Yeah, and they're good instructions, great instructions.
Appreciate that. So that's coming soon. I will be releasing those once I figure out how.
Good. I'm Tim. You can get me at timcostellohypnosis.com. I do what these guys do. And let's go into the thing. Let's just get rolling because we spent so much time yakking at the beginning that
we do.
I'll just jump right into it. It's good stuff. Great stuff.
But hello, first, Zoramina, welcome to the show. P-Dubs Duarte.
Yeah,
welcome to the show, loyal listeners, and we will dive right in. This actually applies to a lot more families than you might think. So, but let's get started. Right around the so that's Jerry Wise.
Golden child is a pseudo self.
Problem child
is a pseudo self. I'm not saying they really didn't come out of a family where that was emphasized. I'm not saying it didn't really happen, but I think once you realize, that's not you. That's not you. It really, I know that's the way you've lived, and that's what everybody's always said. But it's really not who you are. And so, with roles, I think of roles as being a pseudo self. What we want to do is to be our authentic selves.
Not a pseudo self.
Not a pseudo self. Oh, I know. You were saying you're to please. We're going to please. That's a pseudo self. And why am I Mr. Pleaser? Which I absolutely was. Codependent, Mr. Pleaser. Oh my gosh, it was just.
Why is that? To seek approval? Is it to survival?
And I think when you say seek approval, I don't know. I used to teach codependency, have codependency groups. And so I know all the symptoms of codependency and all of that. However, at the bottom line of it is, it's the family's chronic anxiety, which you're not aware of, that pushes you to then go, oh, I need to get approval or I need to be pleasing. So we need to reduce the chronic anxiety so you're not doing the pleasing part.
How do you reduce the chronic anxiety of a family dynamic?
First of all, you have to recognize it. You have to recognize what's underneath your pleasing, your withdrawing, your overcompensating, your hyper functioning, your under functioning. Underfunctioning it comes because of anxiety. All of these come because of chronic anxiety. Anxiety is a bedrock of life. That's how life got started. And we have a brain that functions that way too. But we don't want to function out of our old brain. We want to function out of our new brain. All of this stuff has to do with our old brain. It's the old brain. And so you feel like you're in a room with a tiger. Well, why do you feel like you're in a room with a tiger when there's no tiger there? Because 1,000,000 years ago, you needed that. You needed that anxiety to save yourself. Now we have the experience of it, but it's not there. And so we have to learn to operate with our brain better.
Wow.
So let's hang on right there.
And so,
All right.
lot of stuff to dive into there.
Yeah, I almost didn't know where to stop him. I want to stop him too often or we'll never get through it.
Yeah.
But that tiger in the room that he's describing, so there is in our caveman brain things that are hardwired that will never, ever be gone. Like Ryan and Jordan and I will help you with your anxiety, depression, procrastination, addiction, self-defeating behaviors, those types of things. But what we will never do is get rid of the fight or fight, fop, or fawn. Those will always be there because that's the way you survive. So when he's talking, he's sort of mixing it up a little bit in my mind. When he's talking about the tiger in the room when there is no tiger, that's that chronic anxiety that is developed in the childhood, generally foisted upon us by our parents. And we feel like we constantly have to fight or flight or something. He's talking about fulfilling your role. You know, where do you end up doing things? So if he becomes the joke teller and making everybody laugh all the time, then he's fulfilling whatever role he's fulfilling. But what he's doing is he's seeking that external validation of the rest of the crowd. You know, he needs to feel like he's fulfilling his role and fulfilling part of the crowd in little tiny doses that will be measured out. But I love the idea of the tiger in the room. And again, he does go back. It's caveman brain. You'll never get rid of it all. A little bit of anxiety is actually a great thing because it keeps you safe and protected. But the chronic anxiety or the overwhelming toxic anxiety that most people won't recognize, Jerry's doing a great job talking post-recognition, right? After you recognize, well, like Ryan and Jordan often say, and I'll pop in there one again, if you're born in dirty water and the water is always dirty, how do you recognize the dirty water?
Like if you're a fish in a dirty pond. Yeah.
How do you know about the clean water? You don't.
You've never had clean water. You have no idea what it's like.
So how do you recognize that? And I think he quickly goes past the step of, I'm in the dirty pond water. How do I get to the clean pond water? Oh, I recognize the clean. Now there's the old brain, the new brain kind of thing. So he mixes it up a little bit in my brain there.
Yeah, there's actually a few subtopics all tied into this topic of dysfunctional family dynamics here. And so, you know, he's talking about our fight or flight response, but he actually gets it kind of wrong, in my opinion.
He does.
Because we're not worried just about tigers in ancient times. We're worried about fitting into the tribe, because if the tribe doesn't accept you, your chance of survival goes way down. If the tribe exiles you and you're on your own, you're probably going to die alone in the wilderness. This is, you know, ancient times. And so a lot of anxiety is tied to, oh, if I do this, I'm going to, you know, the tribe will disapprove of me and then I lose status. Now, none of the attractive members of the opposite sex want to mate with me. So your genes don't get passed on. You don't have any ancestors here today. Or there's a hunting accident because they hate you in the tribe and a spear accidentally ends up in the back of your head, or, you know, just whatever. But if the tribe disapproves, you get less resources, less access, you know, to sex, so you can have a family, just all sorts of stuff impacting your survival.
Yeah.
And so that's the saber-tooth tiger he's talking about. because that's how it was in ancient times. But that is playing out now in a dysfunctional family unit.
Right.
And I will tell you, my family unit and a lot of families, there are rigid roles. And he was talking about these roles. He talked about several things, roles, our ancient brain, and then anxiety and codependency. He really hit on like 4 interrelated things. And the thing with playing these roles, why do we play roles? Because I played kind of sort of the golden child. But also, yeah, I would say I was a golden child. I'd say there are 2 golden children and 3 black sheep in our family. And so you're either one or the other. But the golden children were actually, we're not really golden children because they didn't spoil us. It's just we were the good kids. We were the kids that, mom and dad would brag about or show off, but they still just constantly, just constant criticism, constant manipulation, constant shaming. And so all the children got treated equally bad, but we did have these roles. And it's, when it comes to this, I'll just tell you the experience of growing up in this environment was there was something just humming right underneath the surface, which is if we don't do things a certain way, mom's going to freak the hell out and the family's going to fall apart. It's like this really low level, right underneath the surface, there's some hostility and some real instability and fear there. If we don't do, oh man, if mom ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. We had that to the nth degree. I'm wondering if you felt, you don't have to share anything you don't want to share, Jordan, but I'm wondering if you felt that dynamic. If I don't play my role, if I'm not the good little boy or this, the other child's a black sheep, if we don't people please, all this stuff he's talking about, then shit's going to go south. So you better do the role you're assigned to. That was in my family. Did you feel any of that? If you don't mind sharing, it was
a little different. So I actually talked to another member of my family last weekend, and what they said was, this was one of my, I'll say, one of my aunts and uncles. Let's just say, I'll keep it vague.
Yeah.
And what they were telling me was that in their family, what they kind of grew up around was like, don't show your emotion, hide your emotions. If something is wrong, pretend like it's not and put a smile on your face.
Well, we had all of that too, just so you know. But keep going.
Yes. And
that was part of playing the roles. You can't be you.
Yep.
You can't show your emotions.
Yeah. And of course, that's inherently hypocritical because the people that are espousing that are inherently acting emotional while saying that. But that was sort of the role that these people were raised in. And so how does that affect me? Well, how do you think they're going to treat their kids when stressful situations come up?
Mm-hmm.
And the other roles were like, well, family is the most important thing. Always sacrifice, you always got to take care of the family, do whatever you can, at your own expense. Of course,
exactly.
Their family too, but so it only applies to the people that they like, right?
Following the rules is more important than the person being happy or feeling good or not being sad. All your emotions are subgraded to just follow these rules. Did that apply in your family?
I would say that applied in my parents' generation.
In your parents' generation, okay.
Right. That was how more how of course, but that trickles down to how I was subsequently treated. So, if you only have the one skill set of, don't rock the boat, or like now I have power over somebody, so now I can get other people to not notice things or not rocking the boat, then you have the, like, if that's the only skill set you have from your parents, then it inevitably will often trickle down to how you treat your kids. And so that was my discovery of understanding, oh, this is how my family has always been. And probably
what happens if you do rock the boat? What happens if you stop playing your role, stop doing what you've learned to do? To
any number of things, ostracization, emotional outbursts, shaming, guilt, ostracization, or you feel like you get ganged up on by other people and
Exactly.
they shun you.
That's where this
because
chronic anxiety comes from when people have it, because
Yeah.
there's a constant threat that if they do things wrong, shit's going to happen and it's not going to be good. And that was my family dynamic.
Right.
Mom
Right.
and dad are going to fall apart. Mom and dad have it together, but man, if things go a little south, they're going to blow up or fall apart or just whatever. They're going to punish you.
Right.
It's going to be, so there's like this constant threat that I got to do everything just right, man. If I don't, and it would still fall apart from time to time, but
yeah. And things like, I remember my grandfather was really adamant about, we always got to go to church. Always got to go to church. He was very religious. And yet he'd make everybody else go, but then he'd fall asleep.
That's hilarious.
Hey, some of my best naps were in church.
And so I think there's that element of hypocrisy there.
Yeah.
That gets very
do what I say, not what I do. Yeah. Right. I very much got the feeling it's like we got to play certain roles so mom and dad can keep it together. And if they don't, that's terrible. Because, when things went south in my family, my dad, mostly a passive guy. But if things went south, he flew into a rage. He got angry. And he wasn't he was rarely physically abusive. I'll say rarely. He almost never was. I don't think he was with me. But he could fly into that rage. And then, my mom, I remember my dad saying, don't tell your mom that, she'll freak out. But that's, everyone in the family already knew that, she will, start crying and losing her stuff and then guilting and shaming everyone. And, and part of it was a weaponization act, but part of it was, both my parents had trauma, lots, and so I'm not angry at them. I don't resent them because I understand, this feeling that mom and dad are just keeping together. It's pretty much true. They were trying to keep their trauma from getting triggered. They were trying to manage their trauma and all this stuff under the surface that they battled with,
Right.
And this will cause constant chronic anxiety because the threats are constantly there.
Yep.
For me,
underlying hum.
And Carrie, I don't know, again, guys, don't talk about anything you don't want to talk about. So I hope I'm not overstepping any bounds, but Carrie had a dysfunctional family. I think is that okay to say, Tim?
Absolutely.
Anything you want to say on that?
They put the dis in dysfunctional.
Yeah.
What I know now sort of reframes everything I experienced when I came into Carrie's world. I was actually very impressed that they had this big $500,000 home. And that was way beyond. This is back in the early 80s.
Yeah, now it's like 4 million or something.
Probably, yeah. So this is a big deal. And then we go to this golf club for dinner where they've played the US Open 5 times. And it's one of the top 5 golf courses in the world. And you're just, and I'm just like, wow, how'd this hick boy from West Virginia luck into this crowd here, And I just thought Carrie was cute. I didn't know what all this money stuff meant or what it take to get it. But I think now the initiation fee is like $200,000 just to get into the club. Then they got a $25,000 maintenance fee every year kind of thing it's insane.
Not cheap. Yeah.
Yeah. It keeps the poor people out. And then I just started noticing over time, especially when we were starting to plan the wedding and the reception, how there was, my ideas didn't really count. It only really mattered what Betty wanted. And I just thought, that's weird. What about what Carrie wants?
If mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy.
Well, it didn't matter. I mean, my mother.
Not all families are like that, but a lot.
And again, Betty was the subject of a tremendous amount of trauma in her home.
Yeah.
she was one of
absolutely.
a whole.
These people aren't demons. These people are traumatized.
Yeah, and so she
Although
could have
some of
been a
the
sweet
behavior
girl.
is demonic. It can seem like.
She could have been a sweet woman, but she was so wrapped up in what everybody thought about every single aspect of every projection into the community that she could make what they would think.
Yeah.
And I never got that, because I'm sitting there reflecting on my childhood while you guys are talking.
Mhm.
And I just never remember pressure except to do the laundry and clean your bedroom on Saturday morning. Right. That was the weekly progression, was to clean your room and, you know, get the house all back in shape, ready for the next week. And of course we got church tomorrow, so you got to get ready for church and get your clothes laid out and stuff. But growing up, that's the most amount of pressure I've ever felt. So
wow.
yeah, I mean, you met my mom and
felt
dad
that every single day.
every single day.
All
that
the
was
time.
I know, and I
That's
can't
how
even
these families
imagine what
are.
that feels like. I can understand it, but I can't imagine it. But I'm sitting there, and I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad for how they grew up, but I just remember that somehow, and again, my grandparents had 4 daughters. One of them died as an infant, but they had 3 daughters that were living past childhood and stuff. One was my mom, and then she had 2 sisters, and one of the sisters married a controlling narcissist.
Yeah.
And it literally destroyed her life. And because she was a little bit of a, you know, not a strong personality. And then my mom's other sister, she married a guy who's just a wonderful fella. And they're into their early 80s now, still married. He's still down there woodworking. And they've lived in the same home now since the 70s. They've not moved. And they still have the same stuff on the wall. They don't give a crap about what anybody thinks, right? So out of my grandparents, they're just happy. And they got good offspring and all that different kind of stuff. But I see that dichotomy a lot. And it's very interesting that I'm going, when did I feel pressure in my childhood? Never. I mean, I would get you got homework? Yeah, I got homework. Okay, get your homework done. Show me your homework when you're done. Oh, that's pretty good. Nice job. You know, that kind of thing, sort of applauding the effort type. And the things we've learned in this show and with you guys, I'm like, wow, I participated in some of that. Maybe that's why I have less trauma than anyone else around me, kind of thing. Not minus any trauma, but I'm sure less, right?
Yeah.
So pretty interesting. And Carrie, you know, she says, and she used one of Ryan's where she goes, yeah, it was constant terror. She could never do anything right. She could never fold her clothes right. She could never put them away right. I mean, like Ryan says,
exactly.
It was always the littlest crap that means absolutely nothing that was so important at that second. And she's yelling from the other room. Yep. But that's what it is. And I have no idea what that feels like. She's relieved of a lot of that, thanks to Ryan. I'll probably be doing another session for her soon to get rid of some other stuff that's popped up that's less than the big stuff Ryan got rid of.
Honestly, if her childhood was like mine, with how far we got her with one session, it's a freaking miracle, dude. It's like, holy cow.
I mean, I don't know if it was as bad as yours, Ryan, because she was the only child for 9 years.
Okay.
And then a brother came along and she was pushed to the side. And, you know, so now she's wondering, am I good enough? Did I, and there was, and the only praise that I get that Carrie tells me about was because she participated in something and did a little bit well, and her mother would brag about her to her friends, and then that was it. And
wouldn't compliment you in order to show you off, so she looks better
and to make her look good.
Yeah,
you know, make the mom look good. So
and so that's why there's this anxiety there, is because now what he says is first become aware of it, because that's the thing. I thought my childhood, until about age 16, I thought my childhood was totally normal, like good family, you know, because we didn't grow up poor. My parents weren't alcoholics beating their kids. It was all this covert stuff. It was constant. It was constant and severe, but it was just covert. It's like one little criticism is no big deal. And so when someone criticizes you, it's like, oh, okay, they criticize me, well, that kind of sucks, but it's not like they punched me in the face. They just gave me a little dig. Well, I mean, the fact that that happened a dozen times a day, every day for, plus with all this control and manipulation, and then just all this covert stuff. If you don't do what I say, stuff is going to be awful. And occasionally that would happen, but not very frequently, because most of the time I did stay in line, right? So, but we knew the threat was there, that things could go really south. And I had very bad manic depression, mostly depression, constant anxiety 24/7, complex PTSD, anger, rage. I had a lot of stuff because of, this. Now, Jerry says, become aware of the anxiety, and that's the thing. If there's nothing big going on, you're not getting beaten, your parents aren't meth addicts, it's just a dysfunctional family, right?
Yeah.
Well, you don't even know it's dysfunctional. That's because it actually functions until I know with my clients, a lot of my clients, the family doesn't function well, but it functions. That's why people play these roles, because it gets the family to. What's that?
Let me interrupt you real quick. One of the biggest public displays of this, I'll give you two.
Okay.
One is the royal family in the UK.
Yeah.
You watch what's happening there. And the second one would be this TV show that started with 14 kids and counting, and then went to 19 kids and counting or whatever. Yeah. And as long as the mom and dad, and I think the dad was the bigger narcissist and the mom was a player alonger because it looked good kind of thing, until the kids became older and started getting out into society, everything was under control. But now that, most of the kids are somewhat estranged, although they want to get back with their parents, they're marrying off, they're finding that there is better water than the water we grew up in, because it was, again, religion used as a hammer.
Yeah.
And it was bad.
As a weapon of control.
It was dysfunctional religion. So, he kept them trapped in that house. But even the latest daughter that got married, she ran away and eloped because she didn't want to put up with the family garbage. So,
well, for a lot of people, it gets worse once they move out of the home.
Absolutely.
That was absolutely the case for me, because my family environment, very dysfunctional, but within that family environment, it sort of worked.
Yes.
At least you could limp along, and, because
I made your point. Yeah. I was making that point that you made, was that as long as the parents can keep the lid on the mayonnaise jar, it all works. It's not great, but it works. But once that mayonnaise lid is off, watch out, baby.
Well, yeah. And what happens is a lot of people get out into the real world, and how the real world actually works is completely different from how they were raised. And now they have no idea how to function in the world.
Right.
So you become lonely, lost, confused. I was taught certain messages to, get a good girl so I can have, get married and have kids and a family of my own and white picket fence and all that stuff. To do that, do this, 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 and this. And then I start dating and interacting with girls, and it's like they smell the dysfunctional ones, as dysfunctional me, would stay around, maybe even be attracted to me, but like the really dysfunctional ones. But I could sense the dysfunction in them. So fortunately, growing up, when the girls I were dating who were just as dysfunctional of me, I could actually see something wrong in them. So I shied away from them. But then the normal girls, the good girls, would shy away from me because they sensed all this unresolved stuff in me. Yeah. And there was, when I was in college, 5'11", 7-8% body fat, bench pressing 260 pounds. Like, I had the body of like a Calvin Klein underwear model, and, decent looking guy, and I would get attention from girls, but very few second dates. Like, I remember one year I had 36 first dates, 1 second date. And it's just because when they actually start interacting with me, they see, and so on my end, it's like just confusion, just big blows to my self-esteem, but also my trauma in me is getting constantly triggered. And that's when my depression really started. Yeah, I was a lonely kid growing up. I got bullied, all this stuff. I was not a happy kid because of the trauma. But then getting into the real world where now nothing works the way I was taught it should. And so I'm not getting anywhere near where I want to get in life. And it's just hard to function in life. That's when the depression like really came out, and rage and all this stuff. And then I actually got rage after I went to therapy and realized, oh, the reason I struggle is because I was sold a bill of goods, and the entire way I was taught to function actually doesn't work.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And so in this family dynamic, he talks about becoming aware of the dysfunction. You think it's normal. So a fish born into a pond of dirty water, you know your lungs hurt, but you've never known anything else, so it's your normal. So even though these families can be super dysfunctional, with a lot of families, yes, there are absolutely families where the parents are beating the kids and they're meth addicts and all that all happens, but and I think it happens more than we realize. But an even greater cross-section of dysfunctional families are people who seem normal if you're someone on the outside looking at this family, but then you get into the dynamic and you're like, holy crap, is it messed up? You know, normal from the outside, normal for the kids who grow up in that environment because it's all they ever know, but actually quite dysfunctional. But as these kids in these families, we know if we don't play these roles he's talking about, if we don't follow these rules and suppress our emotions, and we're getting the message, we don't matter. What we want doesn't matter. Our opinions don't matter. Our feelings don't matter. Follow the damn rules or there's going to be trouble. And that like constant underlying threat is there. That's what causes the chronic anxiety he's talking about. It's not the saber-toothed tiger from a million years ago. It's humans evolving in tribes and knowing that if the tribe disapproves and kicks them out or whatever, their chance of surviving goes to almost zero in the wilderness by yourself. It's very much side to survival with our ancient brain, but that's how I see everything he's talking about now. That's how I saw it play out in my life. Any comments on that, Jordan or Tim?
Yeah, I can relate to that sort of rage and anger about like, I can't believe it really was this way all this time. And because you kind of,
I can't believe I've been lied to my whole life.
Yeah. And it really makes you rethink everything you thought you knew. You're like, holy crap, if I was lied about this, what else is bullshit that I think I believe? So,
and then it's like, for me, it was almost everything. It was my entire foundation was, yeah, a lot, especially, yeah. I think I'm fortunate because I at least had one parent with their head screwed on straight, but so it wasn't everything, but it was a lot. And not only that, I think I also had to get over the rage of everybody else knows that these people are like this, and they just let me live in delusion. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you all know that this is all insane, and yet
who all knew?
Dealt with it.
Who all?
I don't want to. I don't
mean by name. I'm talking about like, was it the society? Was it the school? Was it the?
It was other family
sisters?
other family members who were very aware of how these family dynamics worked, but they sort of either chose to or couldn't do anything about it. But
they don't want to rock the boat.
Probably more of couldn't.
Right.
They don't want to rock the boat.
Because
that comes with consequences.
How can you prove it? You know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
How can you prove
we love him. He's eating.
Yeah. I think it's just a matter of
doing good. He's a valedictorian. He's an engineer now.
Yeah, he's
sort of
proud
just
of him. His bed's made. He's warm.
Along, you know.
He's in pain, but let's ignore that because everything looks good on the outside.
Or they're in pain themselves too, and they just think that's how it is. I
They
think
are.
that's very often the case. If
Dude, Layla Hermosi talks about that. Alex Hermosi,
Yeah.
the 100 million plus net worth, and his wife Layla,
Right.
CEO of acquisition.com. She just
Right.
talked about how, they both talk about it. They're like, well, you're in pain regardless, so you might as well just work super hard, make lots of money, and be pain. Like Alex Hermosi literally said that.
Well, her tweet was, you don't ever feel better. You just get better at feeling bad.
Yeah.
I know. And
I
I saw this photo of her and she just looked miserable in the photo. And I'm like, poor lady. So
I think, when I'm thinking back through my life, I'm trying to figure out where that constant anxiety would be. And I think for me, the first time I felt it was boot camp. But I think it was very natural because you're in a new environment. You're trying to figure out how to fit in. You don't want to get in trouble. There's a bunch of rules, some you don't even know about yet. But I was thinking back, I think when I was 18 and joined the Navy, that was the first time I really started feeling like, oh crap, keep your head down, try to figure out where to fit in, try not to get in trouble. And again, it wasn't dysfunctional, but it was very survivalish kind of thing.
Yeah, and I've met your parents, and your parents were just kind of cool, chill, down to earth people. You did have a pretty healthy childhood from what I, based on your own accounts to me and me meeting your parents and seeing what they're like. Yeah. So global here, daily discovery of new reality makes one use quiet meditation as the constant frame of mind one carries with them. Yep, meditation can be very helpful. Observing your thoughts, what's there, and then understanding that you as a being are not your thoughts, that it's just part of our physical shell brain doing stuff. Does influence us, of course, but focusing on receiving new information daily, one constant in your inside voice. Yeah, so what we do is core identity rewiring, big, massive shifts in people's core identity to get them to unconditionally love themselves and believe in their ability and value at a core level. You are enough as you are. You have massive value just for who you are. Failure doesn't affect your value. Failure is learning and growing. Those who are the most successful first fail the most because they're trying the hardest things. And so it doesn't affect your value. And, all these other things we put in you, you have great value just for who you are. If others don't see it, it doesn't mean you don't have great value. It means they can't see it. That's their blindness. That's their problem. So we literally put all this stuff in your core that is like really healthy, optimal belief systems. But with that said, once you get this in your core, you still have to go out and live life. And there's still going to be a lot of smaller subconscious programs that you're going to bump up against and get triggered in your life. And you're going to be knocking those smaller ones out for a while. And meditation, self-awareness is an incredibly useful part of that. So.
All right. Are we ready to keep going?
And I disagree with Global here. Outside forces should be ignored. Outside forces trigger what's in you. So outside forces that trigger you, that in combination with whatever got triggered from your subconscious, you should examine it because they are clues as to what's in you that could be fixed and up leveled. So just my 2 cents on that. But maybe you're taking a different angle. I'm not seeing Global. Yep, moving on.
All right.
Thanks, Jordan.
Yeah.
Here we are, 40 minutes in. At least we listened.
So I think
Go ahead.
I didn't realize this. Oh, being like a mascot, I was also a mascot, and so I would get nervous.
I've had many lives, Jerry.
I would get nervous, and in a group, or in a therapy group, or a supervision group, or whatever we do, and if there was tension, what would I break it with? A joke or making fun. And I was serving a function with that.
Playing a role.
I'm playing a role, but it was my anxiety I wasn't managing.
Mm-hmm.
I can't deal with your tension. So I'm going to be funny. If I begin to learn, well, I need to let them have their tension. Why do I need to rescue them from this tension with my humor? And also, it doesn't get us anywhere. I mean, and there's a time to reduce tension. And I've done that certainly legitimately. But whatever we do, overfunction or underfunction, comes out of the anxiety that we're not. Most of what's happening with you, you haven't learned to understand why it happens. You're just living your life as you should. But if I started helping you understand the underlying anxiety, you go, oh, I think you're right. That was my anxiety. Oh, that was my anxiety. And it's the chronic anxiety from over here at the family that we inherit that anxiety, and we inherit that level of self-differentiation. So if there are twos on 10 scale.
So that I keyed off.
Right.
We're more taught it than inherit it.
I'm not talking.
Yeah, I keyed off on that word because they're going to talk about, do you get narcissism from your parents or do you inherit it, that kind of thing. I don't like that word inherit. You certainly obtain it in the environment of those parents, but you don't get it from genetically or anything like that. You come out a perfect little beast, and they teach you how to be rotten, if you will. I mean, I use those words toughly.
You're taught the dysfunction.
Yeah, you're taught the dysfunction. You don't inherit it like all of a sudden I got green eyes because my dad has green eyes. It's not that kind of inherit.
Yeah, personality traits to a point can be inherited.
Sure.
They do these studies and they find out that 30 to 60% of our personality is genetic, and then another 30 to 60% is taught through nurturing, taught from our environments, etc. They both, I think it kind of more or less comes out to 50-50, but it varies from person to person. So there is some inherited stuff, but this dysfunction, like there are people who are naturally just more high strung.
Correct.
There are people who are naturally more hot headed, and it is because of their physiology. But it's usually not just because of their physiology. Like there are a really good illustration is a person, there's a psychopath gene, and that's really the only personality disorder the scientific community is aware of that has a genetic component is psychopathy. But what the study they've done studying psychopaths and what they've observed is that if a psychopath is raised in an emotionally healthy family, he won't be a psychopath. He'll just be an asshole. More kind of like a low-level a-hole. That's kind of a joke, but it's also true. So I was trying to make you laugh. So, but it's true. Like they've done these studies and they find people with the psychopath gene, but they had a good upbringing, and so they're kind of jerks, but they're not psychopaths. They're just not. So every other component is personality disorder, whether it's narcissism, sociopathy, borderline. It's huge childhood trauma, and yep. It's how they learn to, as a child, survive, and it's playing out as an adult because it's stuck in their subconscious now. Yeah. So actually inheriting this, yeah, I mean, we inherit the flight or fight system. That's our limbic system.
Yep.
That's the middle part of our brain, but that's, everyone has that. It's not, So I don't like how he says inherited. It's more we're taught.
Correct.
Yeah.
Morally, spiritually. And so we want to work on raising that number while staying connected. And then my 4-ness helps them become 2 1/4.
Right. Barely. You're not even, barely change.
Barely.
Maybe they shift the role a little bit.
And I'm not even trying to change them. That's not even my, but because we are connected, it's going to have an impact.
Yeah, it's interesting. You talked about inheriting the family enmeshment. Until we are self-aware, learn to self-regulate and self-differentiate, we're going to inherit this family dynamic, this dysfunction, it sounds like. Here's a scary question. Can you inherit narcissism from a parent if you have a narcissistic parent?
Well, that's a science question. And we don't know the cause of narcissism. Certainly we can say a narcissistic parent who is abusive and can create a narcissist. But there's so many layers of things going on, from genetics to how the body affects with environment, affects in their environment, to parenting, to family dynamics, to trans or intergenerational stuff that comes, to biochemistry, to and we don't have one good thing. Go, this causes narcissism. And there's so many people that just say a narcissism is caused by a narcissist.
Just pause
That has
real
not
quick.
been my experience.
Yep.
Dr. Ramani, who's considered probably the top resource or scientist in the world on narcissism out of UC Davis, she would disagree with him. And we've had her on, we've had her or, on the show.
Covered her.
Discussing. Yeah. Like not in person, but we picked apart one of her videos. So she would disagree with him, but keep going.
There's even a couple of YouTube videos, like you could Google on YouTube or search on YouTube, how is a narcissist developed or how is a narcissist made? And you'll come up to a couple of videos that every one of these explanations is 100% environmental.
Yeah. Now I will say that maybe there are certain personality types tied to our physiology that maybe are more vulnerable to, if abused, going down the route of narcissism.
Could be.
Because, you can have a family of 4 kids and they're all abused by the same parents, and one becomes a narcissist and 3 are just super codependent, anxious, and depressed.
Absolutely.
That happens all the time. But it would be really inaccurate to say that that genetics cause narcissism, because there's so much evidence to the contrary that no, it's actually the upbringing is by far the biggest influence. So yeah, we'll keep going.
Now, can narcissists have narcissists? Yes, of course they can have narcissists, but you're just painting a simplified view of it, and I don't think that's accurate, because there's so many dynamics that can affect someone being a narcissist. Why is someone BPD or bipolar, or why is someone, there's just, we're a complicated organism. And so I think and I don't think there's any one study that says this is what that would be probably irresponsible, because that's not what the science.
With all of your work in as a therapist, a family therapist, and a family dysfunctional dynamics that you've experienced and studied and supported for the last 45 years, if you were to design a narcissistic kid to grow up and be narcissistic, what would be the elements? Not that you would do this, but if you're like, hey, if you do these things and this and this and this, you might create a narcissist.
Well, there's some classic things we think about: no boundaries, overindulging,
whatever you want,
spoiling whatever you want, maybe throw in some abuse. I think those would be some good kind of things.
No consequences.
No consequences. Also, many times shaming is a part of that soup that goes in there. But again, it's already baked into the cake in the families.
Because it was passed down already.
It was passed down already. It's already passed down. And so those would be some things I would not want to do with my child.
Sure.
That they do need a sense of self, but not a sense of self-absorption.
I think one that I want to ask you is, how can someone with narcissistic parents set healthy boundaries as an adult where they stay connected to the parent, but they're not enmeshed with that parent anymore, and they don't play the role that they've been playing for a long time?
The way we do that is by inner boundaries.
Inner boundaries first?
Inner boundaries first versus external boundaries. Because if you build your inner boundaries first, you'll be able to hold to your outer boundaries. If you don't, those are just, they're not going to work.
Okay, right there.
Hold them.
Let's pause for a second. The inner boundary, outer boundary, we're talking about inner game and the frame that you build to operate your life within. So I love that reference. I do love the word boundaries, but really it's your inner game. It's loving yourself and knowing yourself safe and secure. You can get whatever you want. You're not raging or angry at anybody. Having that solid inner game allows you to build that solid outer frame with which you operate your life. And, come to point, one of those things I was thinking about, I think that there was a point where Timmy was about 3 or 4. Can't remember exactly, but Sean was just starting to walk, I think. And something was going on in the home. Jack took Timmy for a walk through the neighborhood. like good grandpas do. And Betty was saying some stuff in the house, and in my heart of hearts, she had now just tried to get inside my frame, and she was no longer allowed to play. So I told Carrie, I said, Carrie, grab your stuff. We're leaving. Get Sean, and then we'll go pick up Timmy in the neighborhood from Grandpa. And we drove down the street. We found Grandpa and Timmy. We loaded Timmy in the car, and I said, we're done. We're out. Not going to put up with it. And Jack says, what did Betty do? I said, well, you go talk to Betty. I'm not here to beat up your wife. And we left.
But she's not screwing our kids up. She already,
I wonder how much influence she had, but the reality is I wasn't going to put up with that kind of behavior. I just, all of a sudden, I didn't know that I had a solid inner game. I didn't know what a frame was back then. This is 40 years ago, right? I just knew that somebody crossed the boundary into my frame and they weren't going to play anymore. I'm not going to let them in. And I didn't even realize that then. It just happened.
Imagine every day as a child growing up in a family where you cannot do that. You have to just take it.
No, and I appreciate that 100% now as I understand things better. But yeah, back then I'm like, oh yeah, look at that. So she crossed the boundary.
For you, man.
Yeah, but I do love his inner boundary, outer boundary thing, but I wish he would call inner game, and maybe we just need to get with Jerry and teach him what we know, but he's on the right track, and I love those words. So I just wanted to clarify that with what we talk about.
Okay. Thank you, Tim.
Nice. All right.
Inner boundaries, when I think of inner boundaries, I think of learning to detach, learning to de-enmesh, learning to, I am not you, you are not me. And so if I want to maintain those boundaries, you have to learn to not care.
Wow, that's tough.
And the caring part is the dysfunctional part. And it doesn't sound weird me saying caring part's the dysfunctional part, but it is. It absolutely is the dysfunctional part.
But these are your parents. They've given you so much. They've supported you your whole life.
Tell them thank you for that.
That's the guilt.
Right. And then you
and pause real quick.
When do we?
Because when he says caring, he's talking about caring about them while disregarding yourself.
Correct.
Sometimes you have to choose whether you're going to care about them or you. And if it's constantly they matter and I don't, that's the dysfunction.
Yes.
Here's the truth. No one can take care of you as well as you can.
100%.
Because you matter. Someone should put you first because you matter. Everyone should have someone putting them first, at least some of the time. You're the best one to do it. And if you don't do it, no one will. Maybe as a child, if you had good parents, the parents put you first. Maybe. As an adult, if you don't put yourself first, no one will. And at least someone, because you matter as a person, and even if you are a parent and you have these, it's at least some of the time, because you matter, at least some of the time, someone should put you first. And if you don't do it, no one will. And when he's saying you have to stop caring, what he's really saying is you do stop caring because you realize, listen, they're grown ass people. They can take care of themselves if they really wanted to. A lot of times they play the victim, do all this other crap and choose not to for whatever reason. That's their life path. They can take care of themselves. I can take care of myself. And at least some of the time, you have to choose. You can't always take care of everyone. Sometimes it's an either or. And so you have to stop prioritizing them enough to the point where now, at least some of the time, you can prioritize yourself because you matter and someone should put you first at least part of the time. And you're the only one that'll do it as an adult in most circumstances.
100 on the money.
Yep.
Please stop owing our parents. When do we?
I guess 18. I don't know. Is that what you're saying? Is that the age? I don't know.
Well, I don't think
we ever owe them anything.
No.
That's the thing that you're saying.
That's what I'm saying. Because
we never owe them anything.
I didn't choose to get born. They had a child and they chose.
Right.
That was their choice. And the law says they have to take care of me and raise me. And I didn't.
But it seems like there's this unspoken agreement or expectation that the child is supposed to take care of look at all I've done for you.
All I've done for you. And I would say, I can't tell you how much I have appreciated that. And they would say,
but you owe me your life. I don't know.
or you owe me to do this
do
for
more
me.
for
or,
me. Yeah. Now you need to take care of me because I took care of you.
Right. And the thing is, me taking care of you has to do with my values, my morals, and my choices. And that I have no trouble doing that. However, it depends on what kind of relationship we're going to have. And if our relationship is only an evil one, then probably other means need to be worked out for your being taken care of.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to completely blow up my life and my emotional inner peace. I can live without family. I can't live without inner peace.
Otherwise, you're just continuing the cycle of enmeshment, generational trauma, and you're showing the next generation how to treat each other.
And on a billboard, yes.
Gosh, but it just seems so hard for people because they're like, well, this is how it's always been.
And I would never say it's not hard. And I never look at people and go, oh, well, that should just be easy. And many times people say, oh, well, you just make it sound so easy. This was hard thought easy. This wasn't easy for me. No. And I'm not suggesting you should just be there without any struggle. However, I'm trying to give you a framework with which to work with. If you didn't have to take care of your parents, would you? Or if they are narcissistic parents, and I'm for kids taking care of their parents. I'm not anti-family or I want families to be together. I want them to love each other. But if you have two malignant narcissists, now what kind of caregiving relationship do you want to have with them? You have to decide because you're your own agent.
What's that?
Nursing home.
Nursing home.
Could be.
Honestly, that's the a lot of narcissists in their later years are completely abandoned by everyone, and it's very sad, but they reap what they sow.
Well, nobody wants to be
treated-
around a landmine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yep. At least not voluntarily.
Yep.
Yeah, and the new next, welcome to the show, my man.
And it is better late than never.
Yeah.
Be based on whatever they say, do, or then you're back to being a pseudo self.
And you're acting like a child.
And you're acting like a child. And they're the parent.
And they're in control, or they're pressuring you or judging you.
Well, and they'll be leading you around by the nose if they're bad narcissistic parents.
Wow.
It's going to be so it's that because you're going to have to live with your choices. They have to live with theirs. And in fact, they've made maybe bad choices for the last many decades. Is it your time now to make up for that? How do you make up for their bad choices over decades and decades? I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
Does that mean, and I took care of my mother. Everybody's got to decide for themselves. And also I knew if I was going to do that, I needed inner boundaries.
For yourself. I
had to have inner boundaries if I was going to do that. That it just wasn't going to matter. And, well, why don't you come visit me more at the nursing home? She mentally was there, all that, just physically couldn't do it. And I would visit her on a regular basis, but it was never enough.
Really?
Never enough.
Even if you went every day for months,
it would
still
never be enough.
But you have to create inner boundaries first.
And I have to decide, how much do I want to?
Right. Not because she's guilting me.
Not because of guilting and shaming. And so I'm going, so if I don't, what does she think about me? I'm being a bad son.
And you have to stop caring about that.
And, well, I could even not care about it by totally accepting it.
Wow.
Hey, Mom, I know this is not what you would like. And I know you think I'm being a bad son because I'm not doing what Stan and Janet are doing with their mother down the hallway, who was in my class, whatever. And they could visit every day. But they had a different relationship with their mom than I had with my mom. So it's a different family. If they want to visit every day, that's wonderful. And so I'm okay with being the bad son.
Interesting. So you've accepted that your mother's perception of you was you were not good enough or not being the good son. And you learned to accept her perspective or perception of you. You didn't have to agree with it.
I don't have to agree. I didn't agree with it at all.
Yeah.
And the same is true with tug of war. When you have a tug of war, if I accept it, I can drop the rope.
That's it.
And I just dropped the rope with Mom. I'm the bad son. It's such a shame that God gave you a bad son like me.
He shows up every week for you.
Shows up every week to visit you, and he won't do it any more often than that.
Yeah.
And I just can't imagine how awful that is.
Yeah, so it's a tough life.
See, that's
right there.
So
in fact, I'm such a bad son, I'm going to cut it to 3 times a year.
Yeah, I don't like that particular avenue. So number one, the reason the mother wanted to control him and have him there more, because that's where she got her narcissistic supply.
Oh yeah.
Well, she was pretty empty without it. But I didn't like Jerry's shame back at her. Right. I don't like the shame of, you're right, I'm a bad son. I only come once a week, and I'm paying for your room here, blah, blah, blah. That's shame backwards. That there'd be no good reaction from her for that. And I appreciate
I
appreciate
see where he's coming from,
inside
though.
satisfaction that
Yeah.
Jerry would have from saying that, but it doesn't
he
help.
didn't say he said that to her. He was more talking in the abstract, I think.
So I think you can guarantee that he said that to her somewhere along the line.
Possibly.
It had to have come out. Yeah, I think that's a really good line of, anyway, if it didn't,
But-
why even think it?
Let's not miss the forest for the trees.
Right.
This is actually how you claim your power in a
That's
dysfunctional family, because dysfunctional families keep the kids in line with all these like unspoken threats, all this like, covert hostility, all this, or shaming or criticism, manipulation, all this stuff. But if you just say, all right, now again, I never told my mom, yep, I'm a bad son. I never did that. And so I don't completely agree with this approach, but I absolutely see what he's getting at, which is they really don't have power over you. Her power over him is to say, you're a bad son unless you keep meeting me, or unless you meet me more. And then he's like, well, I don't want to be a bad son, so I'll visit her even more. And now, honestly, this is like personal hell, to so that I'm a good person, I have to subject myself to pain and suffering by visiting this horrible woman who's going to shame and guilt trip me while I'm with her.
Yep.
And so, but if you just whatever they throw at you, if you're like, all right, I don't care, it's not admitting you're a bad son. It's that, okay, I'm going to visit her less and she's going to call me a bad son and I don't care. Now she has, the only other power she has is maybe write him out of her will.
That's about
That's
it.
pretty much it. So much of these family dynamics when you're an adult, and again, it's your trauma that keeps you in the dysfunctional family dynamic, but you can literally just say, screw you guys, I'm out, and they'll rant and rage and whatever, but that's all they can do. That's all they can do.
That's right.
So once you accept that you're okay with them doing that, not that I am a bad son, that they're going to call me a bad son, and it doesn't matter because I know I have value, I know they're wrong, etc. They could, once you accept that they can do all this stuff and you're still okay, then they have zero power over you. Now go live a good life instead of being trapped in this personal hell. And it does feel, I'm telling you from experience, until you clear your trauma, it does feel like a personal hell that you're trapped in. And because you matter, you deserve to get out of it.
My interpretation was more along the lines of they're allowed to have whatever view of you that you want. You can't really control that, and that's like Ryan always says, that's their blindness, that's their issue.
Yeah,
but
that's their problem.
It's not my responsibility to change their view of me if they have a rigid mindset and they don't want to change. And
100%.
it's okay. I mean, you don't have to, like Ryan said, as long as you know that that's not true. But you can't. It's very difficult to sit there. Like Jerry's not going to go sit there with his mom and go, no, I am different because X, Y, Z. And that's what I've tried to do in my past. Been like, well, I'm not this way because of all these things. And eventually I really like that tug of war analogy where you just like let go. You're like, all right,
That's
like,
it.
I'm not going to fight you on this anymore.
Love that too.
Here's the big kicker here. When you have psychological trauma in your subconscious, they're going to pull their stuff and you're going to feel bad because of this belief system in you. When you get that belief system out of your core, which is what we do, then you just naturally don't care anymore. And so just telling people, like someone's playing tug of the war and you tell them to drop the rope, people with trauma, they got glue on their hands, super glue.
Right.
They
And
can't
you know
drop
what's-
it.
You know, I don't like the word don't care. I like to use the word, and I teach this when I'm with my clients, you just don't consider their opinion anymore to be valid. So it's not that
I'd say
care
don't
about
care.
you.
I'm
It's
cool with
not that I don't care about you. I just don't care about that opinion, or I don't consider it to be valid.
Yeah.
It's not a match for what you believe about yourself on the inside. And yeah, and also, but I think the reason I like that letting go piece is because if I think there's like for me, there was a lot of tension between like, I really need this person to change. I need this person to change. Otherwise, we don't have a good relationship. It's poor. But then it's like, oh, I can let go of those expectations, because I think that was what was holding me back the most, was expecting these people to be something that they weren't going to be, but they don't have those skill sets.
Yeah, I accept that for sure.
And the analogy that I liked that I heard recently was like, imagine your dad, when you were born, your dad was in a wheelchair, and it'd be really nice to be able to run around and like, go for walks and, all these do, walking activities with them, running and hiking and all that, but they can't. So you have to find other ways of relating to them. And it's similar to these narcissists or borderline or bipolar or whatever these personality traits are or styles are. You have to find other ways of relating to them that aren't that align with their skill sets that they have. If they have a limited skill sets, and that might be difficult to accept. I mean, it certainly was for me. I'm not saying that's easy, but that's kind of where I'm at now, where I have to kind of accept like, okay, these people are the way they are, and we're not going to be playing this tug of war game anymore of I want you to be this way, you want me to be this way. It's like, no, you are this way, and I accept you for that. But Ryan's right. If you don't clear your trauma first, it's a lot more difficult to even let go of that rope to begin with.
Yep. I'm moving on.
Not impossible. Yeah.
I'm moving on.
Yep.
That's the kicker.
Well, we are a little over the 1 hour mark, so probably time for us to move on as well. But do you guys have any final thoughts?
No, sir. It's been a good discussion.
Okay. So
Happy 100.
Happy.
And
100.
I know Mr. Wise is talking about narcissistic parents, but the dynamic he described today it might be in like 40-50% of the families. Honestly, it's a matter of degree. Some do it more than others, but
absolutely.
Their studies have been done. You can Google it. I've read 2 studies on codependency. They're both university studies, and I gotta look them up again. One found that 90% of people were at least mildly codependent. Another study, it interviewed about 300 something college students, found out 50% were moderately to severely codependent.
Mm-hmm.
This is where codependency comes from, is from environments like this. And again, it's on a spectrum. Some families have it a little, some have it to a very severe degree. Reason we wanted to cover this today is because these dynamics, to some degree, greater or lesser, it's on a spectrum, but to some degree are actually unfortunately very prevalent in modern Western society, and it causes big problems. But you can heal, you can get through it, you can get over it. Sorry, anything else, guys, before I wrap up?
Good to go.
That's all I got.
Okay. And we help people all day, every day. So if you want more information, you can always go to RyanSchool.com / it's on the bottom there. We have for men with anxiety approaching women, there is a coaching and self-hypnosis course there, and also free self-hypnosis course, school.com right there, school.com / RyanFowlerSOS -7231. Join our community. Good group there, free self-hypnosis to help you up level. And if you need more, then contact any one of us and we're happy to help. So that is our show for today. You can do it. You can get through it. You can break this line of dysfunctional family, and then the kids are dysfunctional, and their kids are dysfunctional, and their kids are dysfunctional. You can completely break that poisoned line through these lineages, and then your kids and their kids and their kids will then be healthy for many generations to come. You can do it. You truly do have more power than you know. That's our show. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.